chilling tales, school lockdown horror stories. This is something you guys have been requesting for a long time. It took a lot of effort, but I finally found 3 stories that take place during school lockdowns. These are real moments of terror, forever burned into the memories of those who lived them. It was a typical boring day in calculus. The Friday of 7th period hung heavy with anticipation since spring break was just around the corner. The classroom buzzed with distraction as everyone grew restless, thoughts of freedom teasing them from their seats. Unlike my friends in other classes who battled last-minute tests, we were lucky, or so we thought. Our laid-back teacher had decided to pass the time playing brand quizzes on sparkle.com. I remember the exact moment the day turned dark. Right after my friend proudly shouted, "Adidas," the dean's voice cut through the laughter like a serrated knife. He sounded panicked, his trembling words carrying a weight they never had before. "This is not a drill. Proceed into lockdown immediately." My body broke into a cold sweat as the hairs on my arms stood on end. Our teacher, usually calm and collected, froze for a split second before scrambling into action. The silence that followed was suffocating. Just 2 minutes later, the soft hum of the electric panel in the back of the room died, plunging us deeper into terrified stillness. Then it began. Distant, blood-curdling screams echoed through the corridor. Footsteps stomped down the hallway, the sound growing closer with each second. A man, clearly deranged, was shouting at the top of his lungs, a mix of curses and threats spilling out of him like venom. 2 girls couldn't help but break into sobs, their quiet cries tightening the noose of tension. The booming voice crescendoed as the man reached the lockers just outside. His shouts spiked into terrifying promises. "I'll kill all of you." Metal panels rattled violently as his fist pounded against them. My chest felt like it might collapse. Our teacher frantically motioned for silence, but terror was a living thing in that room, crawling inside each of us. The banging shifted, more menacing now, to the classroom door. "Open up!" the man bellowed, his fists slamming against the barrier as though possessed. A girl let out a piercing scream of no, her fear a contagion, making the rest of us tremble like leaves. Time distorted as his fists stormed the door. Seconds dragged, each pound echoing in my ears like a death knell. And then, just as suddenly as it had begun, the sound vanished, replaced by the eerie retreat of his fading shouts down the hallway. 10 minutes, or perhaps a lifetime later, the dean's voice returned, strained but calmer. "A mentally unstable individual entered the building," he explained. "They've assaulted our staff member at the front desk, but we're currently sweeping the area." He assured us that there was no evidence of a weapon. Still, fear clung thick in the room, refusing to be dispelled by reassurances. Later that evening, when normalcy seemed within reach, rumor stirred fresh horror. A janitor working the night shift reported finding the man asleep in a storage closet, a massive revolver lurking in his pocket. By the time the authorities arrived, he was gone. That knowledge, the absence of closure, still lingers. The second story takes me back to middle school. It was an October afternoon, gray clouds sneering down on us as a light drizzle streaked the windows. Then, 4 booming sounds shattered the mundane chaos. At first the sound was dismissed as thunder, but when the cafeteria transformed into a sea of shrieking voices, panic spread faster than the storm clouds. Security descended upon us like a wave, barking orders to hurry into the multi-purpose room. Students clutching their lunch trays threw them away in hurried confusion as the crowd flooded into the designated area. The multi-purpose room was vast but stifling during emergencies. The see-through glass wall felt like an exposed nerve, chilling in moments like these. Adults rushed to cover it with long curtains, stationing themselves vigilantly at every door. Fear hung thick in the air. My friend Eric, braver than me, hesitated long enough to gather intel from one of the adults. When he returned, his face was pale. "A man," Eric whispered, "a registered sex offender. He's locked himself in the house across the street. He's threatening to kill anyone who gets near if they try to evict him." His words sent ice down my spine. Images of the man watching the school, malicious hunger in his eyes, infected my thoughts. We were trapped there for over an hour. Every time a shadow shifted behind the curtain or footsteps clicked near the doors, my breath hitched. After what felt like an eternity, the man was taken into custody, and we were allowed, cautiously, to leave the room one at a time. Later that week, I realized just how close I was to this nightmare. My friend Brandy lived next to the man. She told me an unnerving story, a Halloween encounter where he had scribbled bloody warnings onto his window for children to see. At the time, people thought it was a tasteless prank. Now, with all the pieces on the table, it was clear his intentions had always been sinister. The final story is my own, and I still feel an icy shiver run down my spine whenever I think back to it. After high school, I worked part-time in my alma mater's basement as a computer intern. It was an eerie place, cluttered corridors piled high with forgotten cabinets and equipment, but our office was a cozy exception to the cold, dreary surroundings. That day started like any other. I sat at my desk with a sandwich in hand when a call from the main office changed everything. A voice sharp with urgency informed me that the school was on lockdown. "Someone's in the building. We think they might be armed." My heart raced. Suddenly, the quaint basement turned into a cavern of paranoia. Our office didn't even have a door, while the basement's main entrance wouldn't lock. All I could do was kill the lights and pray the shadows would keep me hidden. 20 harrowing minutes of silence went uninterrupted. Then came the sound of the basement door creaking open. My blood turned to ice as footsteps pounded down the stairs. Erring on the side of caution, I hid beneath my desk, tuning in to every sound. The steps grew louder, deliberate, nearing my office. My pulse thundered in my ears, but the silence in the room felt far worse. Then, like a cruel mockery of my prayer, a text alert stabbed through the stillness. The sound rang out like a beacon, drawing the intruder nearer. A figure entered. Not turning the lights on, he moved closer. His footsteps paralyzed me, but fear turned into blind panic when he stopped beside my desk. Breathless, I crawled out, pleading between trembling words. The man stared at me from beneath his red plaid shirt and cap with wild eyes, hastily explaining he was hiding. He said he needed an exit. My instincts warred with my rationality, and I hesitantly gestured toward the basement's other end. Then my phone buzzed again. Pulling it up cautiously, the text I read sent me into a deep spiral of fear. The shooter might be wearing a red shirt and cap. My hands trembled, the phone dropping slightly. The man's expression flickered as his wide-eyed panic twisted in understanding. Time seemed to hang delicately between us. Then, all at once, he lashed out. I ran. Bolting for the stairs, I stumbled before hearing a deafening gunshot ricochet behind me. The bullet missed, but the sound nearly stopped my heart. Adrenaline carried me forward, through the stairwell, and right into the hands of the waiting police. They apprehended him immediately, but the escape felt far more surreal than reality should allow. The moments replay endlessly in my mind, leaving behind scars of dread that time would never erase. Each of these stories exposes the raw fear and vulnerability of lockdowns, the uncertainty, the escalating dread, and how fragile normalcy really is. These moments cling to us, lingering ghosts in our minds, reminding us that safety can shatter in an instant.